Before I show this demo on the ES-8, I just kind of wanted to walk through a little bit of basic MIDI. Um, this is kind of the way that I imagine this in my head happening when you're sending MIDI messages to any pedal really, but let's just talk about the Golden Boy specifically. So the ES-8, when it sends a MIDI message to the Golden Boy, think about the Golden Boy as receiving like an email or like something in the mail. It opens up this message, and the first thing it checks is, what MIDI channel is this on? Because if you have your Golden Boy set, so if I go to the Golden Boy web page here, scroll down to the MIDI section, you will see that I passed it. So you'll see you have the option to let the Golden Boy listen on whatever MIDI channel you want. It ships default with channel 1, so let's assume it's channel 1. So if I go back to my message here, if that MIDI channel in the message is channel 3, the Golden Boy is going to say, this isn't for me, I'm going to send that to the trash. If it is channel 1, then it's going to move on to the next question, which is, what CC number is this? So if I go back to the web page again, you'll see here that the MIDI features of the Golden Boy are done by control changes. I've also seen this referred to as continuous controller messages, but either way, CC number. So the Golden Boy uses CC numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that next question it's going to ask is, what CC number is this? If it's not CC number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, it's going to send that message to the trash. MIDI can send some note information, program change information. If you send a program change and you don't send a CC number, that message is going to the trash. The Golden Boy is going to ignore it. But if you send a message and it's got CC number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, then it moves on to the very last question, which is, what is the value of that message? And this is kind of like the meat of that message. And as you can see here, if the CC number is 1, it's going to look for a value of either 127 or 0. If you don't send a value of 127 or 0, then that message is going to the trash. It's going to ignore it, basically. But if you send a value of 127, it's going to turn your drive on. If you send a value of 0, it's going to turn your drive off. Same thing for the boost. If the CC number on the message is number 2, 127 is on, 0 is off. Moving on down to the clipping types for the drive channel, the boost types for the boost channel, and then these gain cycles here. If you send one of these values, it will get that response from the Golden Boy, meaning if I'm using CC number 3 and I send a value of 3, I'm going to get the 4 times symmetrical diodes drive channel. So that's kind of just basic MIDI for you and sort of the way that I think about it. Now let's go ahead and pull up the ES-8 itself and take a look at that. Okay, I'm back with another Jackson Audio Golden Boy video showing some MIDI stuff with that. Last time I showed a few features connecting it to the DMC Micro, which is an awesome setup for a small pedal board. Now I've got the Golden Boy set up on my big board with a Boss ES-8, so I figured I'd show how I've got that set up. Hopefully that helps some people who are trying to do the same thing. And then also if anybody else is kind of using it a different way, I'd love to hear about that too. So kind of like I covered in the very beginning of the video about MIDI, you've got to get the ES-8 set up to send MIDI messages to the Golden Boy. There's a few different ways to do that. There's some different cables on the market that'll do it. The way that I've done it is I've got this Disaster Area MIDI Box 4 over here. And basically what that does is I connect it to the ES-8 with a 5-pin MIDI cable. And the way that I think about this box is that it just takes whatever messages it's receiving from the ES-8 and just forwards those out of the 4 TRS jacks that it has on it. So I've got the Golden Boy plugged into one of those TRS jacks through this cable right here. So that's how I'm getting the messages from the ES-8 to the Golden Boy. Also, as I mentioned in the first video, the next thing you got to do is make sure whatever messages you're trying to send to the Golden Boy are on the correct channel. You'll see I'm using MIDI channel 2. There are a couple different ways to send MIDI messages from the ES-8. The first one is what they call a through patch MIDI slots. And so basically, you know, as you save patches on the ES-8, you've got all these banks, and each bank has these 8 patches on it. So this is bank 6, patch 1. I hit the number 2. Now I'm on bank 6, patch 2. With each patch, you have the possibility to send 8 patch MIDI messages. And in those patch MIDI messages, in each one, you can send a program change message and then 2 CC messages. And as we covered before, the Golden Boy is always listening for CC messages. So patch MIDI changes are a really good way to communicate with the Golden Boy, because technically you could send 16 different CC messages with each patch change because of 8 times 2. So let me show you what I've got set up here. So patch number 1, if I go into edit and I go to my patch and I click enter, I have to go find patch MIDI, which is kind of towards the right on these menus. So there you see patch MIDI 1, and we've got patch MIDI 1 through 8. The way I've got this set up right now, if I enter patch MIDI 1, I can scroll all the way to the left and start here. So the first selection I see is the MIDI channel. I've got that set to 2 because the Golden Boy is listening on 2. This information here has to do with program changes, which the Golden Boy is going to ignore, so I'm going to leave all those off. I'm going to scroll to the right until I get to the next page, which is the first CC message that I can send. So, as we saw on the website, CC number 1 for the Golden Boy is whether the drive is on or off. So right now, I'm showing a value of 0, which means when I hit enter and send this message to the Golden Boy, it's going to turn the drive off. So let me turn that on manually. I'll hit enter. As you can see, when it sends a value of 0, it turns the drive off. If I scroll to the next page, I see my second CC option on patch MIDI 1. And what I've got there is CC number 2. So that is for the boost channel. As you can see, I also have value of 0. So if I manually turn on the boost and I hit enter to send this MIDI message to the Golden Boy, it's going to turn that off. So if I wanted to set up patch 1 to turn on both my drive and my boost, what I would do is just change this value from 0 to 127. So it takes a little while to scroll up, but we'll go ahead and set that. Okay, so I've got the boost set. Scroll back to CC, the first control 1 CC, and let's bump that up to 127. Okay, they're both set to 127. When I hit enter, it should turn on the drive and the boost. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and hit right and save that on my patch 1. So now, if I go to patch 2, which turns the Golden Boy off, come back to patch 1, it turns everything back on. So that's a good way to communicate. Let me show you what I've got set up on patch MIDI 2. So patch MIDI 1 I'm using right now just to turn on and off either of these. And as you can see, like, the cool thing is it's not gonna toggle. It's actually gonna send the on message. So if I have the boost on manually, let me go back here. If I have the boost on manually and then I send patch number 1, it's gonna send on to the boost and on to the drive. The boost was already on, so there's no change there. The drive is off, and so it turns itself on. I'll show that one more time just to kind of drive that home. So that's handy. The other thing I've got set up, so if I go back into patch MIDI, and now I'll go to patch MIDI 2. So I have 2 more CCs on patch MIDI 2. I step into that, and I'll show you, again, I have to be on channel 2 because that's where the Golden Boy is listening. If it's not channel 2, it's just going to flow right through. It won't listen to it. So I've got, for my first control message, I've got CC number 3. which if you remember from the website, controls the type of drive that you're looking for. So let's go ahead and just set it up for 2 symmetrical drives, which would be a value of 1. Then if I go to my second controller, that's CC number 4, which is 25% gain, 50% gain, 70% gain, or 100% gain. Let's go ahead and set that for 1, which is 25% gain. So now if I hit enter here, that should turn green and drop down to 25% gain. And it does. So let me go ahead and write that. We'll save that to patch number 1. So now, whenever I hit patch number 1, it's always going to turn on the drive and the boost, and then always make sure that the drive is set to 2 symmetrical diodes at 25% gain. So as you can see, the Golden Boy accepts 5 different CC messages. Right now we've covered 1 through 4 with patch MIDI 1 and patch MIDI 2. So we've covered 1 and 2 with patch MIDI 1, covered 3 and 4 with patch MIDI 2. So as you can imagine, we can use patch MIDI 3 to cover number 5, which is the type of boost. So if you wanted to do that, you come in, enter, go to patch MIDI 3, and then set control 1 to CC number 5. As you can see, control 2 I have off because I don't need to send another CC. I've got them all covered. So I've got all my CCs covered with just 3 patch MIDIs on the ES-8. So that is the first way. That is probably the most convenient way, because usually you're just tap dancing between different patches. You can, so with your patches you can turn on and off loops and get whatever combination of pedals you're looking for, but then you can also tailor your drive to go with that. The second way to send CC messages, I'm going to show here. So I've got on patch number 3, I've got this set up. Within each patch, you can tell the Boss ES-8 to ignore the default setting for clicking a button. And what I mean by that is, so take a look here. When I hit the number 6 or number 8 or the number 5, nothing's happening. These LEDs aren't changing. Nothing's happening on any pedals that you can see, because I've basically told it, don't change patches. So on 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, I've told the ES-8, those aren't, when I'm on patch 3, I don't want to use those for patches. I want to use those for something else. Okay. I realized, so I lost my zoom in camera on this screen, which wouldn't have done us much good. But then I also realized that I had a huge glare on the Golden Boy, so hopefully I fixed that. Anyway, so I was going to go through the next way that you can use the ES-8 to send MIDI messages. As I mentioned, I turned off the default functionality for all these switches. And to do that, I went into Edit and then Control/Expression, hit Enter. And it's on the far left of this menu. It's any of these numbers. So you can see you've got, mute, bank, up and down. So I go to number 4, Enter, and I just want to turn that functionality off. And I do that for any of the switches that I want to use solely to send MIDI messages. So I did it through 4, 5, functionality off, 6, 7, and 8. So after I've done that, so now I have these reserved for whatever I want to use them for. I'm going to go down, I'm going to go into Control Expression again, and it's on the right end of this menu. They are assigns, that's what it's called. So you have 12 of these. You won't need all 12, but so I'm going to go into assign 1. I'm going to use that for switch number 4. So it gets a little confusing trying to keep track of all these numbers, but so I'm going to go into assign 1. This is the switch. I want to make sure the switch is on. I want to make sure the source is switch number 4. The mode or mod, whatever that is, whatever that actually means, is TGL for toggle. And then if I go to the next screen, you'll see that's, the last screen. Toggle means it's going to toggle between 2 different values. The CATE category or something is MIDI. Again, I've got to be on channel 2 for the Golden Boy. So CC number 1 is the drive on or off, and then this last screen is what I was referring to earlier as the two values you're going to toggle between as you flip that switch. So now that I've got that set up, let me exit out, and I'll show you as I hit number 4, that's turning my drive on and off. So I've done the same thing on switch number 7. I've got that set up to turn the boost on and off. And then switch number 5 and 6, so if I turn on the drive, switch number 5 basically switches back and forth between 2 symmetrical diodes and 2 symmetrical LEDs. And then if I turn the boost back on, switch number 6 switches between 2 different types of boost. You'll actually see, and it's easier to demonstrate on the drive because it goes from red to green. This switch works even if the drive is off. So when I hit 4 to turn the drive off, click 5, switches it back to green. When I hit 4, it's going to be green. So same thing, turn it off, turn it back on, and it's red. So anyway, as you can see I'll just kind of show you that setup on number 5, just to look at the assigns one more time. So since I've already used assign 1 on number 4, I'm going to go to assign 2. I'm going to use that on number 5. So I'm going to start here, make sure the switch is on. Make sure source is number 5. It's toggle, MIDI, channel 2, CC number 3, which is the type of drive. And the values, minimum value is 1, maximum value is 4. Those are the two values it's going to switch back and forth between. So anyway, that is kind of the second way you can set this up. So if you had any presets where you were kind of switching between different drive types, but you wanted to leave everything else the same, that's kind of a good way to do that. And if you wanted to improvise, if you wanted to turn boost on and off, maybe one solo, you wanted to boost, and then you wanted to kick it off to let somebody else come in. The assigns and kind of the extra switch functions are a good way to do that. But anyway, that is it for me on the ES-8 and the Golden Boy. Let me know how you guys use it, and hopefully this video is helpful if you're trying to get set up. And we will see you later. Thanks.